Hey guys, welcome to today's show. We got a good one today. We're going to talk about Graham Platner, a Democratic primary candidate for U.S. Senate in the upcoming midterms. He'll be running against Susan Collins if he wins the primary. At the moment, he has a primary challenger, Janet Mills, former governor. So we're going to, I guess, current governor. So we're actually going to talk about this once a week. I'm going to try to cover a progressive or left wing candidate that's running for office, what the potential is for them winning, what their policies are, who they are, their history. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, let's get into it. So this is Graham Platner. Graham Platner is a Marine and U.S. Army veteran, oyster farmer, and chair of the Sullivan Planning Board, and candidate running for U.S. Senate in Maine to defeat Susan Collins and win back the seat for working Mainers. Whether it was enlisting in the U.S. Marine Corps or coming back home to Maine to work in his community or running for Senate, at the core of every decision Graham has made has been how he can best serve the people of Maine. After graduating high school in 2003, during the height of the Iraq War, Graham snuck his birth certificate out of his father's office to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. After completing his infantry training, Graham was assigned to Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines, and deployed to Al Anbar Province, Iraq in January of 2005, where the battalion served primarily in the area of East Fallujah. In 2006, he was deployed to Ramadi, Iraq, and served as machine gun section leader at the Government Center. He was deployed again in 2007. After his third deployment, Graham enrolled at the George Washington University using the GI Bill. Graham quickly realized that his time serving in uniform was not over, so in 2009 he joined the Maryland Army National Guard. He was deployed to Afghanistan the following year when he served as rifle team leader. He returned from Afghanistan and went back to school at the George Washington University in 2011. Like many veterans, Graham struggled with undiagnosed PTSD and physical challenges that come from heavy infantry combat. Graham eventually withdrew from George Washington University and moved back home to Maine, where he used the resources from the Department of Veteran Affairs to get the help he needed. After 4 tours overseas, Graham was deeply disillusioned with America's failed foreign policy and endless wars and decided to focus on serving his local community in Maine. In 2018, Graham started working on his friend's small oyster farm in his hometown of Sullivan. He quickly felt deeply connected with the sea and the community. He eventually took over the oyster farm and built into a business that produces high quality oysters. Graham also began diving and mooring service to help around the bay and served the town of Sullivan as harbor master and planning board chair. He met Amy Gertner in 2023, fell in love, and got married soon after. They now reside in Sullivan, 3 doors down from where Graham grew up, with their 2 dogs, Griffin and Zevon, and their cat Neptune. So, one thing I did want to point out was that here you have a veteran, a white, big, strong veteran, blue collar guy who isn't a Republican. They exist. As much as that's not my opinion that they don't exist. That is the portrayal of right wing media that we are these weak left wing soy boy liberals that can't stand up for ourselves, have no guts, even though for the last 8 fucking months they've let ICE and federal troops run around cities in the United States breaking the law and violating people's rights. And they got nothing as they waved their "Don't Tread on Me" flags. They got nothing to say about that. So this is a great thing. We have a big tough guy who means what he says and says what he means, and we'll get into that right here with his platform. So Plattner's platform is actually really populist. Um, it's what I would call left wing. And by the way, I am not a liberal. I am a leftist. That is the difference here between someone like my congressional candidate Madeline Dean or former Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania. I'm not going to use Fetterman as a fucking example because he's basically conservative now. Casey was basically neoliberal. Madeline Dean's basically neoliberal. Plattner's a step left of liberal. He has said otherwise that he doesn't consider himself this or that, but that is kind of the vibe side of how you gesture in these races, how you gain those independent right leaning votes. You show them, here, I'm in favor of this, and I'm not going to make you, face the fact that you voted for a left winger. He's not going to rub it in your face. I don't even think it's all that. I think that's just kind of like kind of the vibe that I get from a lot of conservatives who support someone like Bernie or Platner here. So let's talk about this. He has a section that says defend our air, our water, our land, and our climate. Maine is a special place in our way of life, our economy, and our future depends on preserving it. In the Senate, I will fight for urgent action on climate change. We see it, we know it's happening. We know that without sustained action, everything is at risk. I will stand up against efforts to dismantle the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. Moreover, as we're seeing now, we need to significantly strengthen these pieces of legislation so that enforcement against massive polluters and repeat offenders does not depend upon the whims of whoever happens to be president. Now, that's what I like to see from especially a Democratic candidate, but a left wing candidate. You're not just, you know, throwing generalizations out there of like, we need to make sure we take care of our environment, or we need to make healthcare more affordable, or we need big business and corporations and billionaires to pay their fair share, and then they don't offer an actual plan. He says it right here. We're going to protect the Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act. Under Trump, they actually increased the legal amount of sewage you're allowed to have in drinking water in water sources. That's a real thing. They're trying to sell public land to big oil to drill, to frack, to mine for coal, mountaintop removal for coal. So this is a huge deal. We can live and have an industry and have industries without destroying our fucking planet. So it's good that he actually says something on this. It's not the Green New Deal that we want, but it's a step in the right direction for sure. It's exactly what we need coming from a Maine candidate to defeat Susan Collins. Let's talk about his view on healthcare, because there is a video of him where he talks about how it is his bread and butter issue. It is what he cares about most. So, defend Medicare and Medicaid. These programs, while not enough, are lifelines for millions of Americans, allowing them to live with a degree of dignity. And yet, there are many in Washington, too many, who dream of dismantling them for private gain for a very few. I will oppose any cuts to Medicare and Medicaid and work to pass improved Medicare for all. That is a huge deal to gain my support, and this is why I already donated to him. He says the word Medicare for all. He says those words in his issues list on his website. I I don't know what to say. Brian Fitzpatrick, in PA District 1, he keeps winning his race for Congress every year, every 2 years, because not because he's some strong, principled candidate. The man votes with Trump so much. He did back the PRO Act, the pro union piece of legislation, but he gets these union votes and he like barely ever speaks about union rights, about anything specific. Brian Fitzpatrick's biggest strong point is that his candidates are weak on gesturing policy. Bob Harvey, who's running against him right now, I wish him the best. I hope he wins, but I don't think he will, even though the polls, as usual, show it's a tight knit race. It's a very close race. So you need to actually stand up and say something like Graham Plattner does here, Medicare for all, or like we said on climate, stand up for the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, say we're going to protect your health directly. Here's how I'm going to help you, not just vague promises of incrementalism. So let's go on. What else do we got here? Ending billionaire tax dodging. There's so much we could talk about here. I'm not skipping over stuff because I favor any of it. These are just kind of like some of the top issues, not all of the top issues, not in any order either, just some of them. Ending billionaire tax dodging. Tax dodging. We have an absurd system where you and I pay a higher tax rate than the richest people in human history. We must pass a billionaire minimum tax, establishing a baseline tax rate that the super rich cannot go under. This policy is extremely popular, but too often we have elections between multiple candidates who refuse to support it. I will make this election a referendum over whether the richest people in human history should be allowed to dodge their taxes while you and I pay through the nose. One of the reasons Trump won, other than conservative states purging voter registrations and Harris defending Biden's record and her record on Gaza and saying she won't change anything, basically, and then running as Republican light instead of on direct issues, direct help issues, was this. I believe it was $250 million Elon Musk dumped into Trump's campaign near the end, too. This needs to stop. not just for campaign finance, because as Graham Plattner says, that is very important and this is a big part of it, but they're not paying their fair share. Our government's becoming underfunded, and it's how we could pay for a lot of social programs we actually need. How we could pay for Medicare for all. That I mean, let me stop there. That is something we would all be paying into. Do not get me wrong, but they need to pay their fair share on all of this instead of hoarding wealth while they increase prices, while they price gouge, and they don't increase wages. It's not fair. So we'll go on even further. He speaks about the federal minimum wage. It's time to raise the federal minimum wage and index it to inflation, so we never again see the buying power of the American worker eroded as we have over 20 years since we last raised the wage. Now, I don't mind that. That's a step further than saying we're going to raise it to $15 an hour, $20 an hour, because from what I understand, I'll have to fact check myself on this, but inflation right now, if you tie the minimum wage to inflation, it would be like 25 an hour at least. I'm pretty sure. So that's fine by me. That is 100% fine. I believe a livable wage would saying that would be a little bit better gesturing, but I believe a livable wage right now in Pennsylvania is 25 an hour. So I'm fine with this. Raising the federal wage is a matter of basic economic self-preservation, with New Hampshire continuing to hold its wage almost $7 an hour less than ours. He's talking about Maine. It is unconscionable that any politician in Maine would not go to the mat for what's fair for workers and for our state, and across the board minimum wage increase at the federal level. Now, there are states like Pennsylvania where I live where it's still 725. Yes, most people do not make 725. There are still people out there who make 725 an hour. All right? Even if your argument is that they're not making that, $11 an hour is not enough to live on. 12, 13, 14, 15. For in most cases, that is not enough. Unless you're going to work, you're going home, you're going to bed. You're not doing anything with your life. You're just living to work. You might be getting by then. You might be starving, but you might be getting by then. So it's good. So far, everything he has said, I am in favor of. This was a big one, and this is one of the reasons he's actually gained so much ground and he's so popular. The war in Gaza. I have not minced words on this issue. We are sending American taxpayer dollars to underwrite the starvation of Gaza in what can only be accurately described as a genocide. There you go. What took Bernie, and don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Bernie fan. I'm a huge supporter of him still. What took Bernie so fucking long, like almost 2 years, to call a genocide, Graham Plattner saying within his first half year of running. I'm pretty sure he's been running for less than half a year, like only like 6 months, 7 months, something like that. So that's what you need to do. Everybody in the Democratic Party, call it a genocide. Stop voting to arm Israel. Vote to sanction them. Like enough's enough. Stand up. Return the APAC money. Return Israeli lobby money. I don't trust Seth Moulton, but the very fucking least, he returned the Israeli lobby money publicly and said, "Look at me, I'm doing this." I don't care if it was a PR stunt. I really don't give a fuck. He did it. I don't agree with the man on most issues, but he did it. So, yeah, all the above.